For 28 years, the world believed we vanished. Some said we were dead. Others whispered we ran off with men. But the truth is more terrifying than anything they imagined. My name is Grace. I am 70 years old. And today, for the first time in almost 3 decades of hiding, I'm breaking my silence. What happened behind those convent walls isn't a crisis of faith. It's the story of the devil hiding in plain sight, cloaked in holiness, buried by silence. If you're listening, please hear this with an open heart, because what I reveal today will shatter what you think you know about faith, power, and the cost of truth. I was 16 when I entered the St. Mary of Peace Convent. It was my own decision, no pressure, no persuasion. I had always been quiet, reflective. My mother used to call me the Watcher because I noticed things others missed, and at the convent I found peace, a routine that brought purpose, sisters who became my family. There were 5 of us: Sister Martha, the gentle elder; Eleanor, the sharp mind; Joy, who lived up to her name; Sarah, the youngest, shy but sweet; and myself. Mother Agnes was our superior, tough but fair. She used to say, "Discipline without love is tyranny, but love without discipline is indulgence." We lived simply, prayed at dawn, tended the gardens, cooked, cleaned, taught catechism. I felt close to God there. Then he arrived, Father Michael. At first, he was welcomed like a gift from heaven, a tall man with a commanding voice that echoed through the chapel. The community admired him. He brought offerings, books, statues, garden seeds. He smiled with ease, spoke with charm, and preached with passion. But I felt uneasy. His eyes lingered too long. His questions during confession became invasive. His touches, though subtle, always seemed to last a second too long, and I wasn't the only one who felt it. Sarah started avoiding him. Her hands would tremble after they spoke. Joy grew quiet. Her laughter faded. And then Mother Agnes fell ill. Pneumonia, bad enough to confine her to bed. She was our protector. With her sick, everything changed. Father Michael began to visit more often. Under the guise of spiritual guidance, he would call on us, alone. One afternoon I saw it. In the library, he had Sarah cornered. His hand gripped her wrist tightly. She looked like a frightened child. That night I couldn't sleep. The next day I tried to talk to Eleanor. She listened, silent at first, her face pale, then her eyes sharpened. "We need proof," she said. "No one will believe us without it." So we watched and waited, and quietly we began to see. What was happening wasn't isolated, it was systematic, calculated, cold, hidden behind robes and rituals. Father Michael was not just a predator, he was protected. When I tried to speak to Mother Agnes before her illness worsened, she shut me down. She accused me of having impure thoughts, told me to confess, to pray. And I did. I prayed harder than I ever had. But nothing changed. Sarah looked more fragile every day. Joy began skipping meals. Even Eleanor, always the logical one, started losing sleep. We were prisoners, and the man who claimed to be our shepherd was our tormentor. The tipping point came one rainy night. I woke to find Sarah crying outside my door, shaken, her habit torn at the shoulder. "He said I needed to be purified," she whispered. "In the confessional, I didn't let her finish. That night, hatred bloomed in me like fire. The next morning, I asked permission to go into town for supplies. Instead, I went to the bishop's office. I waited for hours. When I was finally let in, I told him everything. I showed him Eleanor's notes, dates, times, behaviors, names. And when I finished, he looked at me and said, "These are very serious accusations, Sister Grace. Father Michael is an exemplary priest. Are you sure?" My heart sank, but I stood firm. "I'm sure, and I'm afraid for the others." He sighed. "I will investigate, but you must be discreet. A scandal like this could damage the church." 2 days later, Father Michael came to the convent at night. He met with Eleanor for nearly an hour. When he emerged, he passed me with a smirk. "God punishes liars," he whispered. The bishop had told him. He told him everything, including who had come forward. Eleanor confronted me. "You went behind our backs?" She didn't look angry, just defeated. The next day, I was summoned. The bishop had issued an order. I was to be transferred to a remote convent in Montana immediately for insubordination and defamation against a man of God. That's when I knew. We were never going to be saved, not by the church, not by the system, not by anyone. We would have to save ourselves. I whispered the words for the first time. We need to leave. What followed were the most terrifying days of our lives. Late-night whispers in the cellar, sleepless nights full of fear, the agony of planning an escape from the only home we'd ever known, 5 nuns, no money, no contacts, and a wall topped with broken glass, but then a miracle. Mr. Miller, the old vegetable supplier, a quiet man with kind eyes. He pulled me aside one afternoon. You don't look well, Sister Grace, if you need help. I've seen this before. My daughter, she suffered too. I stared at him. He nodded. If you need help to get away, I'll help you. He became our angel. He told us about a part of the back wall where the stones were loose, a tree nearby we could climb. He'd leave a rope, and he had a cousin in the Carolinas, someone who could take us in. We began to prepare. We gathered birth certificates, packed plain clothes, left behind everything that tied us to that life. The night before our escape, Sister Helen caught us, an older nun, loyal to Father Michael. My heart stopped, but then she handed me money. I always knew, but I was too afraid. I'm old, I can't go, but you still have a life. Go. The next night, the rain poured. At midnight, we folded our habits and left them behind. We climbed the wall one by one, Martha last. Her hands bled from the shards, but she didn't cry. Mr. Miller waited in the truck. We drove into the night, 5 nuns without names, identities, or homes. But for the first time in years, we felt free, and yet we had no idea what lay ahead. That our disappearance would be called rebellion, that we would be hunted, that for 28 years we would live in the shadows. This was only the beginning. The rain blurred the world around us as we drove. The headlights cut through the dark country road like a blade, and inside Mr. Miller's old pickup truck, we sat in silence, soaked, shivering, and terrified. Joy and I hid under a tarp in the back. Sarah, Eleanor, and Martha squeezed into the cab with him. We didn't speak, not a word. There was nothing left to say. We had burned every bridge behind us. We had escaped the convent, but we weren't free. We stopped in the middle of a field. An old barn stood ahead, abandoned, weathered by storms and time. This is my brother-in-law's place, Mr. Miller whispered. You'll be safe here for a few days. The barn was simple, wooden walls, dirt floor, the faint scent of hay and dust, but to us it was sanctuary. Inside, he had laid out supplies, blankets, canned food, a lantern, even some coffee. Before he left, he turned to us, eyes watery. I never got to help my daughter. I can't change that, but I can help you. He didn't ask questions. He didn't demand explanations. He just believed us. Sometimes that's all you need. We sat in a circle, still damp, still shaken. Martha broke the silence. Let's thank God, she whispered, for delivering us tonight. We held hands. We prayed. No chapel, no statues, just our trembling voices in a barn. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on a pile of blankets, watching the roof leak, feeling every creak in the wood like a threat. My mind raced. Where would we go? How long could we hide? Had we made a mistake? But even in the fear, I felt something new, clarity. This was the right path, even if it terrified me. Mr. Miller returned the next day with more food, clean clothes, and news. They've discovered you're gone, he said quietly. Father Michael is furious. The bishop has called the police. They're searching the highways and the bus stations. We all looked at each other. We weren't fugitives by law, but by the church, yes. We were already branded, disobedient, disturbed, dangerous. Mr. Miller had a plan. My cousin Sam runs a small inn in North Carolina. Quiet place. He and his wife can take you in for a while. I'll get you there. But you'll need new names, new stories. No one can know who you are. Eleanor pulled out a piece of paper and began to write. She was always the planner. We'll be cousins, she said. One family displaced by a flood, starting over. And so Sister Grace became Linda Peterson. 24, former school teacher. Sarah became Emily, my younger sister. Eleanor became Catherine, our cousin, Joy. Rose and Martha, our beloved Aunt Millie. It was strange, speaking those names out loud, practicing them, tying them to memories that weren't ours. But it was necessary. The world would never protect 5 nuns, but it might forget a family trying to survive. Wearing civilian clothes felt like stepping into another life. I looked into a cracked mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The habit had hidden everything, my shape, my hair, even my age. Now, in a simple blue blouse and skirt, I looked younger, more fragile, more visible. Joy came up behind me and smiled. "You look human," she joked. We both laughed. It was the first time I had heard her laugh since before everything started. That night, as we lay in our makeshift beds, Eleanor sat beside me. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I. Do you think anyone will ever believe us?" I didn't answer, because deep down I wasn't sure. The next morning, Mr. Miller came with a truck. "This is Sam," he said, introducing a kind-faced man with quiet eyes. "He'll take you to the inn. You'll ride in the back, covered, just like furniture." We loaded up. Boxes around us, blankets over our heads. No one would question a delivery truck on a rainy afternoon. Before we left, Mr. Miller hugged each of us. "You are the bravest women I've ever known," he said. Then he turned to me. "Linda, tell your story one day." I nodded. I didn't know when or how, but I knew I had to. The inn was in the foothills of North Carolina, quiet, remote. Mary, Sam's wife, greeted us with open arms and no questions. "You're safe here," she said simply. And that was all we needed. We spent 3 months there. 3 months living in silence, hiding, healing, waiting. We cleaned rooms, cooked meals, did laundry, grateful for each uneventful day. Sarah, now Emily, started sleeping again. Joy began smiling more. Martha knitted scarves for the guests. It wasn't home, but it was something close. One day, as I helped Mary hang sheets, she took my hand. "I don't know what you ran from, but I know it must have been terrible. You don't have to tell me, just be safe and know you're not alone." Tears welled in my eyes, because she did know, not the details, but the pain. Some people don't need the story, they just feel the weight. But the peace didn't last. The story began spreading. Local papers picked it up. Nuns missing from Havenwood Convent. Police investigating suspected kidnapping. Then the slander started. Disobedient nuns fled due to rebellion. Priest claims they suffered mental imbalance. I read the headlines in secret. My stomach twisted with each word. Father Michael was rewriting the story, and people believed him. The final blow came when we heard of Mother Agnes's death. Heart attack. The news claimed it was from the shock of our disappearance. We wept, not because we felt guilty, though we did, but because we never got to tell her the truth. She died thinking we had betrayed everything. We had to move again. Sam had a friend in Cleveland who ran a garment factory and needed workers. "No questions asked," Sam said. "You can start over again." We packed what little we had and left the inn. Another goodbye. Another layer of our old selves buried. Cleveland was loud, busy, anonymous, and perfect. We rented a small house on the edge of town, started work sewing uniforms. It was exhausting. But for the first time, our survival didn't depend on the mercy of others. We paid rent, bought food, lived like women, not ghosts. Sarah adapted quickly. Joy struggled with the city noise, but she found comfort in the routine. Eleanor, Catherine, took on everything like a commander. And Martha, always steady, became our morning coffee angel. I'd watch her boil water, humming the same hymn every morning. "Peace like a river attendeth my way." She never stopped believing. Years passed, our lives became normal. We had fake names, new jobs, stories that didn't quite fit, but we survived. And yet, every church bell made my heart race. Every priest's face turned my stomach. I couldn't trust the cloth anymore. Our prayers changed too. No more rote Latin verses, just whispered truths in the dark. Lord, protect us. Give us strength. Forgive us for fleeing. And always, help us heal. Then we lost Martha, a stroke, sudden, cruel. She passed away in the kitchen. We buried her under the name Amelia Peterson. No one knew she had once been Sister Martha. No one honored her life of service. She died a stranger to the world, but not to us. We mourned her quietly as the city roared on outside. After that, we moved again. Charlotte, North Carolina, a larger city, faster pace, new jobs, new walls. But no matter where we went, the past followed. One Sunday in 1994, I saw a newspaper headline, Father Michael celebrates 30 years of service. There he was, older, grayer, still smiling, still untouched. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. While we hid in shame, he was being honored. I showed the article to Eleanor. She stared at it, silent. Then she said, "What will we do when we're too old to run?" And she was right. We couldn't hide forever. One day, the truth would need to come out. But when? How? And who would still care? In Charlotte, life moved on. We moved into a modest home, tucked into a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where no one asked questions, and everyone stayed out of each other's business. We'd learned by now how to blend in. Each of us had become our new names in full. I no longer corrected myself when someone called me Linda. It wasn't just a name anymore. It was armor. But even in hiding, time catches up with you. Eleanor began coughing more often. At first, we thought it was just a cold, the kind that goes around in the winter, but her health declined fast. The color in her face faded. The light in her eyes dimmed. We tried doctors, but she didn't improve. One night after coming back from the hospital, she sat beside me in bed and took my hand. "It's not just pneumonia," she whispered. "It's cancer, and it's far along." My body went cold. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, tears filling my eyes. "I didn't want you to worry," she said. "Not until I was sure." I remember sitting there in silence, overwhelmed by helplessness. Eleanor, the strongest among us, the planner, the problem solver, the one who had always held the rest of us together, was fading. In her final weeks, she made a request, one that would haunt me. "You must promise me something," she said one night, her voice barely audible. "Promise me that one day the truth about Havenwood will come out." "I promise," I whispered. But even as I spoke the words, doubt clawed at me. Would anyone believe us now? Would it matter anymore? "The truth has strength," she murmured, "even when it's late." 2 weeks later, Eleanor passed away quietly in her hospital bed. Her grip had grown too weak to hold my hand in the final hours, but her eyes remained locked with mine until the very end. We buried her under the name Catherine Fields. Another funeral with another false identity. Another silent mourning for a woman who deserved honor, not anonymity. Her death left a hole in us, in me. She had been our backbone, and now it was just Joy, Sarah, and me. Sarah, Emily, tried to cheer me up in the weeks that followed. "Maybe she's finally at peace," she said one night. "Maybe she found something we haven't." "I hope so," I replied, but part of me still felt guilty. We had fled to survive, but in doing so, we buried parts of ourselves that could never be retrieved. Joy, ever the hopeful one, still carried a quiet longing to return to religious life in some form. "I miss the structure," she said. "The peace, the prayers." "Do you miss the convent?" I asked. "No," she said quickly. "Not that place, but I miss the way it felt before when it was still good." Her heart was always soft, too soft for this harsh new world. And just 2 months after Eleanor passed, that soft heart began to fail her. She had been living with a heart condition for years, but it had gotten worse. She passed away in her sleep one morning in 2003. Just gone. I remember touching her cheek and knowing instantly that the warmth had left. Another sister, gone. Another funeral. Another alias. We laid her to rest as Rose Thompson, No nuns, no choir, no rituals. Just a quiet service, a bouquet of lilies, and my hand pressed against her coffin for far too long. Now there were only two, just Sarah and me. In the years that followed, Sarah found her own kind of healing. She married a kind man, another factory worker. They had 2 children together. She had a house, a garden, a family. She had found a way to build a life, a real one. She never told her husband who she really was, and I never pressed her to. We each healed in our own way. I stayed in Charlotte for a while, alone in our now too quiet house. I worked in the factory until it shut down in 2005. Then I moved to a small town in North Carolina's foothills, bought a little sewing shop, opened it with what I had left. No one knew who I was, no one asked. And for a while, I lived in peace. But peace is different from closure, and the promise I made to Eleanor weighed heavier as the years went by. I had her notebook, still sealed, still unread. She'd given it to me before she passed, saying only, "When it's time, you'll know." I kept it in a drawer, locked away like a dangerous secret. Because that's what it was, a secret that could still destroy lives, even after decades. I kept tabs on Havenwood through news clippings and radio reports. Every so often, I'd hear his name, Father Michael, then Monsignor Michael. Every time I saw his face in a paper, I'd feel sick. He had risen, been promoted, honored, celebrated. In 2000, he received the Honorary Citizen of Havenwood Award. In 2004, he was appointed head of a seminary. The man who destroyed so many lives was now in charge of shaping others. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I stayed quiet, because to speak was to risk exposure, to risk Sarah's new life, her children, her happiness. So I waited. Then one day, something changed. In January of 2007, I saw a small story in a local bulletin. New priest appointed to assist, ailing Monsignor Michael. His name was Father John. Young, newly ordained, and something in his interview caught my eye. When asked what inspired him to join the priesthood, he said, "My sister was a nun. Her faith inspired me, even after her untimely death." I read that line over and over. His sister had been a nun. She had died young, and he had chosen the cloth because of her. Was it coincidence, or was it her? Was she one of us? My hands shook as I put the paper down. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, urgency. This might be the moment. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at Eleanor's notebook. The lock glinted in the lamplight. I reached for the key. My hands trembled. And finally, I opened it. Eleanor had documented everything. Dates, names, incidents, pages of detailed accounts, even conversations with priests who had dismissed her concerns. One entry mentioned a letter, one sent to the bishop in 1977 by a previous superior, raising concerns about Father Michael's behavior. The margin note from the bishop read, "Matter resolved internally." They knew, they had known, and they had done nothing. Eleanor had preserved the truth for this moment. I made a decision. I would return to Havenwood. I would find Father John. I would tell the truth for Eleanor, for Joy, for Martha, for Sarah, and for myself. I didn't tell Sarah. I couldn't. She had a family now, a life I refused to jeopardize. I packed Eleanor's notebook, some clothes, and boarded a bus back to the town I swore I'd never return to. Every mile made me feel smaller, older, but more certain. It was time. I arrived unannounced at the parish office. Father John greeted me. His eyes were kind, curious. "Can I help you?" "My name is Grace," I said. "Sister Grace, I was one of the nuns who disappeared in 1979. His eyes widened. I watched disbelief turn to shock, then recognition. You're her?" "Yes." "I thought you were dead." I shook my head. "Number I was hiding. We all were." He closed the door behind me, gestured for me to sit. "Tell me everything," he said. And so, I did. I told him the story from the beginning, the convent, the trust, the fear, the betrayal. He listened without interruption, without judgment, just listened. When I finished, I pulled out Eleanor's notebook and handed it to him. She kept it all, I said. He opened it slowly, read the pages, his face turned pale. My God, he whispered. He closed the book. I believe you. And for the first time in 28 years, someone inside the church said those words to me. I believe you. Then one day, something changed. In January of 2007, I saw a small story in a local bulletin. New priest appointed to assist, ailing Monsignor Michael. His name was Father John. Young, newly ordained, and something in his interview caught my eye. When asked what inspired him to join the priesthood, he said, "My sister was a nun. Her faith inspired me, even after her untimely death." I read that line over and over. His sister had been a nun. She had died young, and he had chosen the cloth because of her. Was it coincidence, or was it her? Was she one of us? My hands shook as I put the paper down. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, urgency. This might be the moment. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at Eleanor's notebook. The lock glinted in the lamplight. I reached for the key. My hands trembled. And finally, I opened it. Eleanor had documented everything. Dates, names, incidents, pages of detailed accounts, even conversations with priests who had dismissed her concerns. One entry mentioned a letter, one sent to the bishop in 1977 by a previous superior, raising concerns about Father Michael's behavior. The margin note from the bishop read, "Matter resolved internally." They knew, they had known, and they had done nothing. Eleanor had preserved the truth for this moment. I made a decision. I would return to Havenwood. I would find Father John. I would tell the truth for Eleanor, for Joy, for Martha, for Sarah, and for myself. I didn't tell Sarah. I couldn't. She had a family now, a life I refused to jeopardize. I packed Eleanor's notebook, some clothes, and boarded a bus back to the town I swore I'd never return to. Every mile made me feel smaller, older, but more certain. It was time. I arrived unannounced at the parish office. Father John greeted me. His eyes were kind, curious. "Can I help you?" "My name is Grace," I said. "Sister Grace, I was one of the nuns who disappeared in 1979. His eyes widened. I watched disbelief turn to shock, then recognition. You're her?" "Yes." "I thought you were dead." I shook my head. "Number I was hiding. We all were." He closed the door behind me, gestured for me to sit. "Tell me everything," he said. And so, I did. I told him the story from the beginning, the convent, the trust, the fear, the betrayal. He listened without interruption, without judgment, just listened. When I finished, I pulled out Eleanor's notebook and handed it to him. She kept it all, I said. He opened it slowly, read the pages, his face turned pale. My God, he whispered. He closed the book. I believe you. And for the first time in 28 years, someone inside the church said those words to me. I believe you. He said the words I never thought I'd hear. I believe you. After 28 years, someone in the church finally looked me in the eye, not as a threat, not as a liar, not as an embarrassment, but as a human being, as a woman who had suffered, endured, and survived. I sat there in Father John's quiet office, heart pounding. The silence between us was filled with 1,000 unsaid things, guilt, grief, disbelief, and maybe hope. He gently placed Eleanor's notebook on the desk in front of us and ran a hand over its worn leather cover. I don't know what to say, he murmured. You don't have to say anything, I replied, voice thin but steady. You're already doing more than anyone else ever did. But I knew. Believing me wasn't enough. We needed action. The next few days passed in a blur. Father John and I began working together quietly. He contacted a younger bishop in the diocese, Bishop Mattis, a man with a reputation for standing against corruption, even if it meant challenging powerful figures in the church. We set up a meeting. I was terrified. But Bishop Mattis didn't flinch when he heard my story. He didn't raise an eyebrow when I said Father Michael had been abusing his authority for years. He didn't dismiss me. Instead, he knelt. "I ask your forgiveness," he said, "for what the church allowed to happen to you and your sisters. We have no excuses, only shame." For the second time in less than a week, I broke down and cried in front of a priest, not out of pain, but relief. The investigation began discreetly. We needed to gather every piece of proof we could before Father Michael caught wind of it. If he found out too soon, he would bury whatever evidence remained, and maybe bury me too, metaphorically or otherwise. But fate was merciful. Father Michael was recovering from a mild stroke at the time, staying in the state capitol for treatment. He was out of Havenwood. The timing couldn't have been better. With access to the parish archives, Father John and I dug through dusty boxes, old files, and letters from decades ago. And then we found it. A letter from 1977. Written by the previous Mother Superior, addressed to the bishop at the time. It expressed concern, vague, diplomatic, but unmistakable, about Father Michael's inappropriate interactions with the young nuns. The bishop's response was